It's the True Penny Show with your host, James True Penny.
Hello and welcome to the True Penny Show. My name is James True Penny. This is my show, and this week we continue the story of Akira Hokuto, the life and times of Akira Hokuto, if you will, part 2. And to join me on this epic closing journey, Mr. Marcus Green of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. How are you doing, sir?
Feeling good, glad to be back. We can't do a part one without closing out with part two. This legend is deserving of that, and we always finish what we start here, the True Penny Show. So it's the conclusion to an epic career.
Absolutely. So when we left you, she had just had the biggest moment of her career, which was the headline in the Tokyo Dome with Aja Kong in the V-Top tournament final, defeating Aja Kong and claiming the V-Top championship, which was really signaled the close of her career in AJW. There wasn't much we missed out of her AJW career. The only match I remember thinking back that we did miss out was the fact she was on the biggest show of all time. She was on that show in North Korea that was headlined by Ric Flair and Antonio Inoki. And her and Bull Nakano wrestled Chapahesa Asari and Manami Toyota in a match that was just phenomenal. But we have looked at it so many times in the Tribune Show, I felt it was probably worth we didn't bother with that one. Because it's just so much. It can otherwise, you're like, you know, the story with Kandori, she wrestled most of the LLPW roster in over a year, and you have to go back and go through all the details and try and figure it all out. So it's Maeda packed it in. There's stuff we didn't cover, but we'd still talk for 2 hours, and it wasn't enough to do the first 10 years of her career. So we're going to move on to the second 10 years of her career, more or less. It was probably closer to around about 7 years. And it starts, of all places, WCW. Now, I have done extended the playlist for this week. So if you watched the playlist last week, there's more to watch, about another 10 matches or so. And we're starting in WCW by way of Gaia Pro Wrestling. Now, as we said last week, Chiga Sonagaya resigned from AJW. She came back in around about 1994, did some matches on the Dream Slam shows, and she decided to start her own wrestling. She went to JWP for a bit first, after her run with AJW kind of ground to a halt, and she decided to start her own wrestling promotion called Gaia. Now, we've given Eric Bischoff some stick down the years on this show, and we will continue to give Eric Bischoff some stick. Because me and Marcus are TNA fans, and good lord, he deserves it. However, one of the things he did in WCW was to reach out to Japanese promotions and try and create connections with Japanese promotions that had not really been used before. And he was always looking for something to fill Nitro and Thunder and Saturday Night's main event Saturday Night Wrestling Live, with something different that no one ever seen, to try and connect different parts of the audience. And one of those parts happened to be women's wrestling from Gaia. He struck a deal with Chigasona Gaia. She came over as Zero. I think I only saw her wrestle once or twice. What really stuck was Akira Hokuto. And the first match on our playlist is from the center stage in Atlanta. We've got Mark Curtis as the referee. We've got Kiara Maeda as the opponent. Akira Hokuto being managed by Sonny Ono, with Bobby the Brain Heenan and Tony Schiavone on commentary. This is as WCW as it gets. Marcus, what did you think of this?
Yeah, this was interesting because I have not ever really checked out WCW on an extensive manner, certainly not. But this was, like you said, as soon as they opened up as a news broadcast, I thought, okay, yeah, we entering a different phase of this playlist. Yeah, like you said, it's WCW as they got, and it was cool to see because obviously it's with the women and some of the stuff I went back and watched WCW has, and more so with the cruiserweight. I wonder if that kind of what maybe in your opinion would kind of tip Bischoff to maybe lean more towards into going to different avenues to open up appeals because the cruiserweight had captivated the audience in a way. So obviously you want to extend that and open it up to, like you said, the Japanese promotions. But yeah, this was clearly, by the time we get to this version of the legend Akira Hokuto, she was kind of just in her final boss mode throughout the rest of his playlist. and it was really cool to see just how many proverbial F she didn't give coming out, and then she get in the ring, and these obviously younger talents would kind of throw everything against the wall, but really not see anything stick. It was really cool because, like I said, by the time we get to the end of our last show, we had actually seen that evolution. So to get to kind of live in it now, it was cool. And this, I think, is a great start, and you place these matches together really good in order in terms of like what it would look like as the younger talent got better talent wise, both singles
Mm.
and tag team. But here, this was a nice start because this was really showing that she really was like that pillar that you needed to be, even if you were like uh I would say 17, but I don't know why I'll be shocked
Yes.
at because that's the running back.
Oh, that was Sonoki Kato and Meiko Satomura were wrestling on Monday Nitro at the age of 17 years old. Um, yes, Tsunoki Kato still going, still wrestling to this day. This was interesting because Maeda was the first signee to Gaia. She came over from AJW. She had an interesting career in AJW, but was always kind of a mid carder. She was the first signing that Nagaya wanted to run the dojo. She trained Meiko Satomura and Sonoki Kato and all of those starters in the early days of the Gaia dojo until Chigasona Gaio kind of took over as well. And she would be from day one to the last show on Gaia. She was there through the whole of the company's existence. She did turn heel later. And in WCW, she was kind of like a bit of a tweener because here she's wrestling Hokuto, and we will see her shortly as a heel tagging with Hokuto because there wasn't really enough women to go around, as we will see through this particular the run. I do find this presentation really interesting. Obviously, Mark Curtis sadly no longer with us. He passed away of cancer not in 98, I think. Sonny Ono these days presents a home shopping network. Apparently, he's really good. Um, obviously, late great Bobby Heenan, and Bobby was not as normally as annoying as he normally is when commentating on women's wrestling. It wasn't great. It's still reasonably misogynistic. And Tony Schiavone looking exceptionally young. Obviously now an AEW mainstay. So it's just weird because I watched this the first time, obviously when it first came out, and it was just a bit strange to be honest. So the next matchup we had well, it says Akira Hokuto on the tape, but it's not. It's Rina Kibuki. Rina Jibuki, Jikubi, I just say. And we did look at her in her CMLL wrestling career on the last playlist when we looked at that. And this is an example of the fact there just wasn't enough women in this roster to make the roster work. So double duty was the way forward. So in this particular case, we have Sonoka Kato, the rookie from Gaia, one of at that point Akira Maeda's students. Akira Maeda, Keiru Maeda's students. I'll get that right. And then Akira Hokuto coming out wrestling as Reina Jiuki, which is really interesting because she doesn't wrestle like Akira Hokuto barely at all. She's much more technically gifted. It's not so violent and in your face. It's kind of still a heel move, but she's kind of feeling things out. I included this one A because Sonoka Kato is awesome, especially in this kind of like innocent girl mode that she's in here. These days, she's a gruff old veteran who beats people up for fun. But this was a really interesting take on the fact that they were kind of seeing what stuck even with the veterans. Does she work better as a masked character and being mysterious? Can we get an extra couple of matches out of her because she's freely available when she wears a mask? I thought this was really interesting. What did you think of this one, Marcus?
Yeah, same. Like you said, we explored that on the last show about her kind of broadening her horizons and kind of expanding her uh, aesthetic repertoire by kind of donning the mask and doing something different, which I appreciate because, like you said, she didn't wrestle like her herself. She added like you said, got the more technical sides of it. Still heal because you put somebody in the arm or arm lock and then start biting their fingers, um, and get a little bit more playful with it, not necessarily as dastardly. Instead of going to the top rope and hitting a signature drop kick, she'll come off with like a diving splash. So I appreciate when performers different personas and actually switch things up in a genuine way. So, like you said, this was a way of kind of supplementing what they didn't have while trying to see exactly how much appeal she had in other avenues. But ultimately, I think we both know. I think they ultimately came to know you can't really equal or surpass what she was doing in her regular Hokuto form. That was just because I think that's like you said in the last show, like it's just so many years infused and narratives behind that final boss of it all she evolved into. Um, this particular match thing almost came off like this something else to do that was cool and worked for a period, but the legend kind of worked better long form, which we're going to get off into in a little bit as she's building a lot of these names by way of beating the snot out of
Yeah, this is the key issue. Sonoka Kato, still an active wrestler for Oz Academy, still a badass, and this is the beginning of her story. In her next match, she tags with her regular tag team partner in Gaia, Meiko Satomura. At this point in 1997, 17 years old, the same as Sonoki Kato. They go up against, as I said, Kaoru Maeda, or Kaoru as we know her, and Akira Hokuto. Now, Satomura and Kato were kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Cast as happy-go-lucky wrestlers when they were literally fire and brimstone in the tag team back in Gaia. But they're obviously presenting themselves to an audience at the center stage in Atlanta, Georgia, where this year's Great American Bash was held. I was researching earlier. I forgot that had happened. Yeah, the center stage was where I probably watched more wrestling than anywhere other place on earth because of the amount of wrestling that was gone on at the center stage. So watching these four in the center stage is really strange because you're kind of used to seeing them at Yokohama Arena or Kurikan Hall or anywhere else they wrestled. Watching these four is absolutely fantastic. And it's intriguing because the winner of this match is Maeda, Kaoru, the moonsault. Still the prettiest moonsault in all of wrestling history, in my personal opinion.
it was ace.
Yeah, so it's interesting that Hokuto's the heat getter because obviously she's the established heel. Kaoru's tagging and wrestling as a heel, obviously against the youngsters who are much smaller, lighter, and incredibly young, ridiculously young. How did they get them work permits? What's the minimum age for working in Georgia? Did they pay them? I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. From they had WCW had their ways, I guess. CNN connections, Ted Turner, all that. But it's interesting how Kaoru's the one that gets the pin. Like, Hokuto's clearly the star, but she gives space for Kaoru to do her business. What do you think of this one, Marcus? Because this one's a bit more interesting in the dynamic, I feel.
Yeah, agreed. I just kind of feel, first off, we just haven't been too long covered the icon Mako Satomura, so to see her like really young, like a literal baby face, from an aesthetic perspective was really really cool. And then I end up like with a smile on my face and then immediately going to frown because it's like, oh, these two got took to the shed in this match. Um, like poor girls ran into two female ECs and it didn't it went about as well as you could expect. But I wondered to your point if they went that way with the match. And by the way, and before you even said that about Kato, I'm like that was Karu, one of the best looking moonsaults I've ever seen, perfectly landed. So yeah, I understand why you home. I wonder if they went that way with the ending because obviously, like you said, Hokuto let her get her stuff in, and it took nothing away from. The finish got done. You got to see the moon. You got the pin, but I think they probably went that way because immediately following that, you go off into the the aftermatch stuff, which was all Akira and somebody else. Because Akira, like I said, final boss mode torturous, not giving a crap. Match is over. Somebody's running out, and she's mid submission. It's still like mid submission that's coming out. She doesn't care. And then obviously she turns her eye elsewhere to somebody else who always heard a lot about but hadn't gotten to see in her prime. Certainly, I think this was her earlier stages before she became infamous for a certain thing. But yeah, this was I think they probably went that way because it split things evenly. It got Karu the nice highlight, and then obviously it led into the, like I said, the aftermath because there was a match to come after this.
Yeah. So at the end of this match, Hokuto and Kaoru getting their heat in. And who but comes to ringside but the number one contender for the WCW Women's Championship. And the final for that match would appear at Spring Stampede, which is the next match we're going to talk to. But Medusa Maselli coming down in heels and jeans and, of course, a Stars and Stripes bomber jacket to confront Akira Hokuto. Now, this isn't the first time they'd wrestled, I think. The first time they wrestled was back in '89 when Medusa Maselli was in AJW. She had a 2-year run. She had a year as a babyface, and so a year as a heel, and then a year as a babyface. And of course, one of the reasons why WCW had a talent swap agreement with Gaia is because AJW had been working with the WWE. So Hokuto and Alundra Blaze, as she was back then, had crossed paths, I think, at least on AJW shows, because there was quite a bit of back and forth between AJW and WWE back then. This was, of course, when the time when WWE was on its uppers and couldn't draw, and they were throwing anything at the window to see what would stick, including Aja Kong versus Alundra Blaze. But this match is kind of like building up the heat for that particular match at Spring Stampede. But again, it's an interesting angle because Hokuto makes such a great traditional Western heel, doesn't she?
Yeah, like the minute Alundra, I'm guessing this is not her in her final phase persona yet, where she kind of comes out and it's kind of like the hard and grizzled person. Like she still looks very like parent teacher conference, Alundra Blaze, I guess if you will. Here that kind of wholesome apple pie type Alundra, and she comes down here and because she's looking like, why don't you stop this? And Bago, Akira immediately drops the leg and just becomes all piss and vinegar with her. So it's really cool to see that because it was you don't necessarily get that a lot these days. Sometimes it's a little it's supposed to be given piss and vinegar, but it's given like a pinch of salt sometimes when they do these pull aparts. But yeah, this was cool and it set up a very interesting match. And we're gonna get off into with it's gonna be interesting to hear your thoughts on it because I think they could have did more than they did, but I understand. Like I said, this
I
is
think
kind of
this,
WCW.
yeah, this is the issue. This is Akira Hokuto and Medusa Maselli for the WCW Women's Championship. Sorry, not Tag Team Championship. It's Spring Stampede. It's 1997. Again, it is peak WCW. You've got Dusty Rhodes and Tony Schiavone with Lee Marshall on commentary. You've got Akira Hokuto with Sonny Ono, and all they're talking about is Scott Steiner from an angle in the previous match. So we're not quite at full on NWO period yet. We're still kind of like the expansion is going on. Of course, this is the show where Hulk Hogan would found the NWO, wouldn't he? And then, the company would take a completely different direction. I've just realised I've done the maths on that. So he would be the third man. This is the National Hall thing. And Hokuto comes in and they have a match. The whole video, so that's including intros, is 8 minutes and 17 seconds long. And they don't get a chance to do the things. Now, Medusa Maselli, as Alundra Blaze and as Medusa Maselli, was a main event talent. She could go. She had AJW training. She was a dojo girl in AJW. She had wrestled for years in the AWA. women's champion in the AWA, she knew what she was doing as a wrestler. She knew what she was doing in the wrestling industry. Obviously, her most famous role at that point as being the manager of Rick Rude in the Dangerous Alliance. She knew her business. And Akira Hokuto, we know, obviously knows her business too. But this match is 8 minutes and 17 seconds and kind of seen as an afterthought. But listen to the crowd. Into this.
Yeah.
On a basic Japan versus USA model. But Hokuto plays to the crowd perfectly as a Japanese heel in an American company, as the job she's supposed to do. This is wrestling. This isn't pro wrestling. It isn't Joshi. It's wrestling, isn't it? WRS or RASSLIN. Yes. So, what do you think of this one, Marcus?
I thought it was cool. Like I said, it was cool to see Melundra in her earlier years and kind of going through that all American girl type deal. And like I said, they both played to the crowd perfectly. And then even Kira's manager did what he needed to do, and then Alondra played well off into that. They had all the good elements. It just, like I said, I just think they could have did more. And obviously I'm biased because I'm coming into this match like Akira does such a great job of making younger, more less skilled opponents look like they can really beat her. But I'm sitting there like in my mind, I'm like, there was no way she ever had a chance of beating the absolute beast at this point. But they sold it well because it always in moments. Rarely is Akira being dominated, but it's always in the little moments where they counter her and catch her in a small package or a backslide and stuff like that. It's always some quality near fall, but it's never like, okay, this person is clearly better than Akira so much as they got a lot of fire and passion and um, experience in a match. But Alondra showed a lot of great stuff here. But like you said, so much of the before the match was about somebody else, and then the aftermatch is like, okay, we're going somewhere else with this because they need to run this back. But I think for what they had, the time that they had, they got their proverbial stuff in, and it worked.
Yeah. This was a point, of course, where Luna Vachon had also signed with WCW, and she comes and runs interference for Hokuto at the end of the match, and that's how Hokuto gets the win. But it's a really weak pinfall as well. It's like, if I remember correctly, it's just like Luna gets. I'm trying to remember here. Luna just kind of hits Medusa.
She took a leg out
and
on a
then
power bomb.
that's it, yeah. She takes the leg out. Yeah, we've got to that point now. Yeah, she kicks the leg out from underneath her on a power bomb, and Hokuto just kind of like sits on her. It's like, what a weak ending. That's just made your baby face out to be. Oh, she kicks out on 3. I suppose that's reasonable. But it is just like, you do wonder. WCW booking sometimes was just like, oh, we're not going to give the baby faces anything at all. No, suffer longer, more, harder. So yes, but this was a really interesting kind of capture of what was going on with the WCW women's division, which maybe didn't quite catch the imagination the way the cruiserweight division did, but certainly had an influence on wrestling in the world over the next 20 years. But we're going to move back to Japan, and we're going to move back to Gaia proper. And this time, the WCW women's champion, Akira Hokuto, will wrestle Kaoru, back to being a babyface in Gaia, back to being the upper mid card that she is. Akira Hokuto back to being the main event badass that she is as well. So this is more of Hokuto in her new home company. She is a heel. She's one of the top heels in the company. And she kind of is still wrestling that style that she had in AJW, but this time there's no real respect. There is more and more levels of disdain for her opponents who are just never quite good enough for her. And that's always the intriguing thing of, like, where will she place this wrestler in this particular match? And with Kaoru, there's obviously a little bit of respect, but she's the top dog, and she's going to show it. And this is a wonderful technical piece of wrestling. It's such a contrast to the match with Misselli that we just watched, This is a main event. It has the time, and they're going to go for it. And Kaoru starts with a kick to the back of the head before Hokuto's even got her belt off or her ring jacket off. This may have been a poor choice. Marcus, your thoughts?
Oh, bless her. Great strategy. Just didn't get to carry it through the way she wanted to. Um, got the jump on her, and all she did was wait the line up fully after a warm meal. And kudos to her because I do think she kind of showed a little bit of think in her arm in Akira's arm. She can really, I guess, be susceptible to some pop up variations.
Yeah.
However, Kaoru went to that well one too many times, and the back half of this match was a lashing. Um, even before that, Akira probably locked in one of the deepest sharpshooters I've seen, which was after, yeah, but she definitely pissed off in a significant way and got a woodshed of submissions and all kinds of stuff. But he, you know, Kaoru showed up and showed out in this match. Like I said, it's on a different level. She really pushed her to a point, but yeah, like I said, she put Akira in a mood, and by the time you got to the end of this, like the way she what she went finish off with that trademark drop kick. Oh no, worse, she snowplowed her and then put the knee on the neck. Yeah,
Yes.
that's how that
Yes.
went. Yeah,
Yes. Northern Lights bomb is the way things must go. That's
yeah,
Hokuto's main MO is the Northern Lights bomb. And it's such a brutal maneuver, and it's such a part of her magic as well that you know you're constantly on edge for it. You're constantly waiting for it. She'll pull it out at any moment, and you know it's over. And that's arguably what a perfect finisher. And look who uses it now. Masha Slamovich uses it in honor of her. Obviously, Al Snow, the snowplow, he used it for years. Um, uh,
yeah,
Nakajima in Glate, the current UWF and Glate champion.
yeah,
Akira
yeah,
Hokuto's adoptive son, he uses it as his finisher.
yeah.
That's the what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to say Julia uses it too.
Yeah. It's become such a it's such a violent maneuver, and you got to be really
Yeah,
good to get it right because you will break their neck.
yeah, man. It's a
uh,
head dump. It's a pure head dump. That's what it is.
yeah, it's the most vicious pile driver ever invented, and so fitting to this woman that is arguably the most vicious wrestler ever whoever
Yeah,
created
which is
herself.
which is nice to know, talk about, and recognize because the tombstone has become a super kick at this point.
Yeah, but even then, it's like that short pile driver she uses as well. A very old school British style maneuver. Just get it done quick, short, sharp
Yeah,
shot, boom.
exactly.
And everything's about the neck. Even like the sharpshooter is about the neck. Really, it's not really about the back. It's about putting pressure on that neck, weakening the neck for it. Everything has a place with Akira Hokuto's offense at this point, and it all leads to Northern Lights bomb. That's where she's going. She's got the whole thing so purely designed, and everything works so well. We should also say at this point, the matches from here on in largely come from a channel called Gaiaism, which has the rights to the Gaia back catalogue and puts up edited versions of their matches, and has done for the last 4 or 5 years or so. It's a really good resource if you want to go find more about Gaia, and I'm sure we will do more about Gaia, and we'll use that channel an awful lot. But there's lots of notes in Japanese, obviously, but you can use Google Translate. And this match is a real kind of gives you an idea of what Gaia was about. It was taking that hardcore AJW style, making it a bit more direct, taking off the fancy bits. This is about trying to appeal to a largely male audience in a way that AJW was doing in the mid 90s, and trying to build on a pure wrestling aesthetic, I think, which was what made it really interesting for me as a wrestling fan point of view. There is less fanfare, but more action, if you see what I mean. Would you agree, Marcus?
Oh, absolutely, and it, um, watching things how they go sometimes in America, sometimes you know, the foundation of it, no matter what you call it, no matter what you try to when you try to put on, the foundation of it is in that squared circle. So
Yeah.
no matter and over here, I think sometimes, and obviously with a recent brutal news story coming out of a certain independent promotion, sometimes
Yeah.
catering too much outside noise ultimately doesn't benefit anybody. Um,
No.
so a lot of times watch Japanese wrestling, and they really just keep it in that square circle, get down to the real nuts and bolts of it all. And because that crowd is naturally akin to the art form anyway, you're gonna keep them glued and eventually get them on a hook because they deeply respect the craft in terms of like the performance of it all, as opposed to getting themselves over, which we've talked about extensively numerous times. But it's really a collaborative effort. It feels like between the audience and the performers a lot of times when it's done right, as opposed to an adversarial relationship in the states where it's like, okay, who's gonna get over tonight? Is it gonna be the crowd or is it gonna be the product?
Mm, yeah.
Or is one gonna be over at a point and then the tide's gonna turn and then there's gonna be a disagreement. Then by the time everything's over, it's a one big agree to disagree from the people in the building and the people watching at home, and it kind of gets weird. So like you said, just getting back to that form, it's always gonna work. It's a surefire formula.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really the idea with Keiru and with Hokuto. They're brought in for wrestling ability, but they're also brought in for star power. Specifically Hokuto. Keiru was always a draw, but she was never the draw that Hokuto was, and I think she would be the first to admit that. She became a much bigger draw as she got older. Whereas Hokuto was obviously one of the biggest draw in women's wrestling at the time. And
Yeah.
that enabled her to put herself in a position as like the dominant force which the youngsters had to kick off. And here is the next match is a really good example. It's a 6-woman tag team match. Actually, Sonoki Kato and Meiko Satomura, doing alternate commentary if you want to listen to them, what they think of their early part of their career. Sonoki Kato and Meiko Satomura are tagging with another AJW wrestler, Toshiya Yamada, and they're going up against of Gaya's also trainees, which would be Meiko Matsumoto and Toshi Uematsu. Now, Uematsu would also go off to the States and wrestle on Monday Nitro as well. But Hokuto essentially had come in and told the youngsters, if you want to come train with me, I'll make you better. And Uematsu and Matsumoto took her up on the offer, and that's the reason why they ended up being her tag team partners. And they brought that level of arrogance and anger with them. And this is a kind of really interesting kind of match because it's the early days of Gaia. We're 2 years into the promotion. Satomura and Kato have become the tag team in the company. Toshiya Yamada, who is kind of like the model for both Kato and Satomura, is there tagging with them. And on the other side, you've got Uematsu, who was still playing with her character and would eventually become a star based around an otherworldly character that she kind of developed. Matsumoto is very much in the mold of Hokuto as well. So you've got this heel face dynamic, but it's still based on pure wrestling. We're at Kurikan Hall. Tom is the referee. This is all the way up and down Gaia Pro Wrestling at its best. What do you think of this one, Marcus?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it, like, because obviously, like I said, this whole playlist is ace, and you order these matches really well. But I think because obviously there's a different gear that she kicked up when it came to her singles, particularly when it comes to a lot of these younger women, because obviously she was with the win, but it was just as much about getting this younger talent over as it was the end result. But I think in these tag matches, to your point, that she's training these young ladies and saying, obviously you want to get better, you come bang with me. And also they're gonna get the business doing the match, but it's gonna absolutely make them better. And to your point, it did. But I think just watching these tag matches, not too dissimilar from the match they had um, with the Alundra running after. She's really good, particularly here, at being a very vital point in the match without ever coming off like the uh main person. Like she's like an
Yeah,
orchestrator, but you never see the stick in her hand.
yeah,
Um, and that's really good, and that really shows like an ace veteran and what she does. And obviously, you want to be pivotal in the match when it's time to break up a near fall and whatnot. But she's really good at playing her position, which sad to say, a lot of times older veterans really, I guess, in a lot of ways, choose not to do, but because they're still in that mindset of I'm the longest tenured or I'm the vet here, so I get the spotlight. She does none of that here, and yet she still plays like the most important key. It's an art form in itself, kind of like how we try to give credit a lot of times to the referee who has to do everything and make it look like they're
mm,
doing nothing at the same time. So it's
yeah,
yeah, it's a really good cool thing to see these young ladies, particularly like I said, the goat Mako Satomura in their kind of in their infancy in a way
yeah.
be in these positions. Yeah.
Funnily enough, the Gaia Girls documentary just had its re-release in the UK. Kim Longinita, the director, and Meiko Satomura hosted it in London. There was an Eve show afterwards. Um, and Gaia Girls is, if you're interested in this kind of wrestling, you've got to watch Gaia Girls. You just have to. You can find it on the internet. It's on YouTube and it's free. And it's the story of a trainee in the Gaia system and how she does. And it's Chigasona Gaio and Meiko Satomura, and it tells you'll learn more about Japanese wrestling watching that film in an hour and a half than I can ever tell you, because Kim did such a great job of presenting it and telling this story of this young girl who never quite made it, but it's the story of how she suffers, just suffers. As you imagine, it's a dojo, right? It's not easy. This is not an easy thing to do. Being a Japanese wrestler is about the hardest thing you can possibly want to do in your life, right? And then being a female Japanese wrestler is even harder on top of that, because you've got all of the patriarchy stuff, you've got all of the horrors of being in a dojo and looking after other people and 500 sit-ups and the push-up bar and the whole 9 yards. And that story is absolutely fantastic. And Kim Longinito, who I've interviewed before, I recently did the Meiko Satomura's story part 2 or 3, I think. And I went back to that interview, and Kim's such a lucid storyteller. Even in the interview with me, she was like telling me things, all sorts of things that went off in the filming of that film, and how she felt and wanted to present pro wrestling uh, in a documentary sense. And yeah, it's about this period of Gaia, and you should go watch it, because you should. There's no more to me. Just go watch it. It's one of those things. It's actually going to watch it. And to be honest, this entire playlist is one of those you got to go watch it things today. But this is just a prime
Absolutely.
example of how to make other people,
Yeah.
and make your tag team partners and make yourself. Sorry, Marcus, you're going to say something.
Oh no, just agreeing.
Yeah. So let us move on. A different way of making people. So this one is a little short match. It's Akira Hokuto versus Sakura Hirota. Sakura Hirota is the best comedy wrestler on earth. Currently a mother of 2. This was when she was 16 and a junior in Gaia, and still trying to figure out what her character was. And she was the plucky underdog for a very long period of time, and she was Chigaso Nagayo's tag team partner, and the fans didn't know what to make of her, because she was this little comedy act that just tried to wing it and try to survive in this Gaia universe of like, here is this tiny woman up against these legends, and she gets beat up every time, and then eventually she just gives in and starts being a comedy wrestler, and the fans loved her for it. And she is still a comedy wrestler today. We watched one of her matches on the first Sendai Girls show we reviewed, and she's fantastic. And here, as a young wrestler, her first choice is to shake hands with Akira Hokuto and whip her into the post. Which, again, is a poor choice for a rookie to make. And she instantly gets demolished by a wrestling god who does not deign her with the benefit of an actual proper finisher. She only needs a dropkick to get the job done. But this is really a great way of getting Hirota over just through sheer violence. It shows off Hirota's absolute fantastic ability to keep a straight face for a start and to really just kind of take punishment on an epic level. And you kind of get what her career has gone since then. You know, we were saying like she's a mum of two. She like when her youngest was born, she would take them. She would go on the train to the wrestling venue, leave the baby with the other wrestlers, go wrestle a match, and then get on the train home again, because she loves wrestling that much. She don't have to do it. She's a married woman, but she loves wrestling, so she's going to keep doing it. And this is the birthplace of where she was as a wrestler in 1997. Also in 1996, actually. I got this slightly wrong in the order, but never mind. What did you think of this one, Marcus? Because I just thought this was a fun one to throw in.
Yeah, this is like reminds me of being in grade school and seeing like an overzealous parent come up to the school not to talk to the teacher but to fight the child. They kid might have got into it with, which is gonna feels like it's gonna happen again in the next match, except the mean parent's gonna have a blade. Um, but yeah, she really and it's funny because you mentioned that young lady before with that story about wrestling coming to a show, leaving the baby in the back, which is a
Yes.
hell of a trust exercise, and then wrestling and then coming back after likely having a match like this and then getting back on a train, which could also present a particular safety issue. Um, but yeah, like you said, it's just I guess it's just the way she rolls. So kudos to her, but she learned a very tough lesson in this match.
So we're watching this as we're commentating just to remind us of things, and just the boot in the face as she ran off the ropes at full speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to say wrestling isn't real. How do you fake that? No, it's just like, yeah, well, this is just madness. It is just like Hirota does an absolute level best, and Hirota would end up being quite the babyface draw for the company. Later, when Kaoru turned heel and joined Mayumi Izaki in a tag team, they ended up wrestling. They ended up wrestling Hirota and Chigaso Nagayo, and Nagayo dragged her kicking and screaming through that match. I've seen it; it's brilliant. Yeah, so it cemented her as a very skilled grappler, which she is. But like most comedy wrestlers, have to know how to wrestle. Otherwise, it's not interesting, is it? It's just someone just mucking about. And Hirota is kind of like a prime example of how to be a great comedy wrestler on a fantastic base. But yes, this was a little fun one. She needed a beating because otherwise they're not going to feel sorry for her, are they?
No.
Yeah. So there you go. Now, next up, we have some serious business. It's 1999. This is a comeback match for Hokuto after she'd taken some time off to have her son. And when she gets back, she is back in Oz Academy, tagging with her Mayumi Ozaki. They've taken on the young kids and started their own crew within Gaia. In fact, they've started their own promotion within Gaia. And Oz Academy is still a promotion to this day. They take their time from when they were founded as a faction in Gaia, not from when they've had their first show. And Oz Academy is a massively influential promotion. It was the first promotion where the Hontai team were the heels, and it's been an incredible place to watch pro wrestling over the last 20 years. But before that, there was Oz Academy, and there was another heel faction in Gaia, led by Lioness Asuka, called Superstar Unit, SSU. And SSU recruited a certain tag team called Los Kakaharas Orientales, Etsuki Mita and Mima Shimoda, the protégés of Akira Hokuto. So, well, here comes the consequences of my prior actions. The two baddest heel teams in all of pro wrestling. Mayumi Izaki and Akira Hokuto going up against Etsuki Mita and Mima Shimoda. Oh, good God. The four most hated heels in pro wrestling history in a wrestling match. And they don't care anymore, because they're out to hurt one another as hard as they possibly can. This is quite the affair. Sorry, Marcus, I didn't warn you about this one, and I probably should have done.
You know, that's exactly what I said to myself watching this. I'm like, James didn't warn me about that. They gave me a heads up. Hey, we're gonna call this no F's given match.
Oh no. The garden of F's is barren. It did not grow this year.
Jesus,
I described this last night when I was watching it on Blue Sky. I said wrestling isn't a matter of life and death, but when it came to SSU and the when it came to Wars Academy and the SSU, it was more important than that. This was about bragging rights. This was about tradition. This was about you taught us, now we'll teach you. This isn't just about like seniors and juniors. This is about who's the best tag team of all time. And this is the match to prove it. And this starts out in the most godforsaken way. Izaki and Hokuto were known as Nostradamus as a tag team. And they get announced, and the music hits. And they come down to ringside by about 5 steps. And then as soon as they hear the LCA's music, they stop, they turn around and wait for the door to open. And that is like the baddest of badass moves. It's just, and then it just goes from there. And they're out for murder. They just want to kill each other.
Yeah.
There is more chair shots, there is more blood, there is more just violence upon violence upon violence in one tag team match that you've ever seen. And it's a straight tag team match. That's it. It's not even a street fight. It's not a no DQ match. It's a regular tag team match. All four are bleeding before the first bell starts.
Yeah, it's crazy. And this isn't coming off a feud. This is just a regular single setup match.
Yeah, this is just like, we want you because we're better than you are.
Yeah, it's crazy because we don't even get these over in the States. We don't even get this type of intensity during blood feuds. We'll get to Hell in a Cell and it's a lockup. Like I'm not the only time I'm touching you is when I'm trying to kill you. But this, like, never have I seen like it looked like the way they use the chairs. It looked like the chairs was using their heads to sit down.
Yeah,
like, it's insane. But
oh
yeah,
yeah.
this is blood, guts, and gore. Pissing vinegar split 4 ways, and yeah, it goes the way you think it's gonna go, and you know it's funny because you get to the backstage and Akira's talking like nothing's on her face, like nothing. She hasn't lost anything. Like these women are absolutely aced, and I put them against any tag team of men because I think it's supposed to be a walk in the park. Yeah.
I've said this many times. The LCO would have taken the Dudleys' much money and made them cry. Hokuto and Izaki are just badasses off the top notch. They just are the most violent tag team I've seen in a very long time. You know, they just don't make tag teams like this anymore. LCO used to start the match driving somebody headfirst through a table with a pile driver. They didn't really get going until that moment. And if it was a championship match, they'd try harder. And it's just Hokuto with just a massive smile on her face because she gets to beat people up. And moreover, these are her friends in real life.
Yeah, it's crazy because the way they got jumped before the match, James point, it got to the point where once they started fighting back against Hokuto and her partner, they started using each other as weapons. They
Yeah.
was throwing each other outside, and it's insane. You know, this is one of the you got to go watch this whole playlist. As Dan said, don't cheat yourself. I mean, don't beat yourself. Treat yourself with this playlist. But definitely go back and watch this match. We're giving you a warning ahead of time, but it's as awesome to watch as it is brutal. And this isn't the only brutal match on this playlist, but it may be the best of the brutal on the playlist.
Oh yeah, it's like the Shimoda and Mita come for their comeback, and they just throw their pastel shaded chairs that are made to match their outfits because we style as well as we beat people up. It's just like peak LCO with the founder of the LCO on the opposite side, and they just want to kill each other. It's just flat out murder from top to bottom. Just the most violent match you can possibly imagine. And like I said, they're friends because they wanted to make it that good. Because this is the one shot they get at wrestling each other, so they're going to make it as good as they possibly can. And it's just brutal. And these are arguably the four most influential pro wrestlers of the last 20 years. Here is the person that invented Northern Lights Bomb. Here is the person that invented the Death Rally Driver. Here is the person who kind of redefined what a heel has to be. Here is the tag team that redefined heel tag teams. Here is a woman that took it on herself to start a promotion based on the heels being the Hontai team. There isn't four wrestlers who've done what these four women have done. And they just lay it all on the line. This is that good. You got to see it. It's a spectacle. It's the dream match of all dream matches of this era. And you've got to see it. Like you said, you just got it. Ozaki and Hokuto are heroes by default because they're the hometown team, right? They're the ones that have been with Gaia the longest, whereas LCO have just come in to join SSU. But that aside from that, there's really no telling who's the fan favorite and who's the heel because they just batter each other and batter each other. LCO had a really interesting way of throwing chairs as well. Like they didn't hit. They didn't. They used. There was too many chair shots to the head this match. If you don't like chair shots to the head, don't watch this match.
Yeah.
But they didn't swing at full pace with the chairs. They kind of held them halfway up, so there was a lot less impact, but it looked deathly. It just looks so violent. And of course, there's like Mita's yellow chair is just covered in blood, so it's got this yellow and red aesthetic to it. And they're that drained and blown up after about 10 minutes. Everything's running in slow motion, and they're selling on their knees by the end of this match. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and because by the time like they're bleeding so early, every chair shot feels like death. Also, and again, got to give up for the camera work. As soon as you get the chair, zoom in on the mangled chair wrapped around the neck. Like I said, they're already bloody and it's just staring off. It's just something like end this for me now. Whoever's running the universe, find it. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's no coincidence that Mima Shimoda is the person that taught Jay White how to swing a chair and be a badass heel in New Japan Pro Wrestling, because she works in the front office of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Asuka Mita had to retire in the early 2000s, unfortunately due to health concerns. But Mayumi Izaki is still going strong, well into her 50s now, and still one of the scariest women wrestlers of all time. Love her to bits. She's absolutely fantastic. Will never stop bringing the violence because that's what she's about. But yes, you have to go see this match. It's the thing you have to do because you do. Oh yes, I've kind of screwed up the order here a little bit. I realise now. Shall we move on to the next important one, sir? I think something I've got covered. Yeah. So the next match, which is really important, we have got a couple of others to watch. Which are less important. They're fun things before we get to the serious business of Hokuto's retirement, is probably the most important match of this run. This is the match that helps set the tone for women's wrestling for the next 20 years. Akira Hokuto versus Meiko Satomura. It's the main event. We're at Yokohama Arena, which is like the home of Academy still to this day. It's one of the biggest shows Gaia ran. And it doesn't feature any of the big stars. I realise we've missed one. We'll go back to that one in a second. Actually, I'm going to put a 10-second in there. We're going to go back to the other one because I realise it won't make sense if we do it in the wrong order. Okay?
Sure.
Okay. Things must have got moved around because it wasn't like this morning. Anyway. Sort the later order out later. Right. The next match is in 2000. And we're still back. We're not with Nostradamus this time. But we have the biggest tag team of women's wrestling history. In 2000, after Lioness Asuka left SSU, she reformed her tag team with Chigasaw Nagayo. They became known as Crush 2000 because they didn't have the rights to the name of Crush Gals. And this is their re-debut as they take on the legendary Devil Masami and Akira Hokuto, two ghosts from their AJW past. Devil Masami was a senior when they started, and Akira Hokuto was a junior when they reached their peaks. So you have Chigasaw Nagayo and Lioness Asuka tagging for the first time in over 10 years. And you just see the reaction. The streamers, we're at Yokohama Arena, the streamers flying into the ring for Lioness Asuka, deep blue, red for Chigasaw Nagayo, their classic all-time colours from their AJW days. They stripped their jackets off to present new ring gear because they're Crush Girls 2000, because everything was new in 2000. Even the Crush Girls, who were like, the most established team in women's wrestling history. And you have the match that has to happen. It cannot fail. This has to be as good as it possibly can be because it's the biggest tag team in women's wrestling history, making their comeback against two of the biggest, baddest heels in women's wrestling history. Tommy's your referee, and this is all go, non-stop, absolute beginning to end stuff, 24 minutes and 35 seconds, and it's as good a pure wrestling match as you will ever see. It's not particularly violent. It's a straight up and down wrestling match, but it establishes Crush 2000 as the team in Gaia in very short order. This is fantastic wrestling. If you've not watched any Crush Girls, you should do. But this is a good starting point because it shows you what they're like in the latter part of their careers. They're in their 30s, they've slowed down a little bit, they've put on weight, they've changed their style to be more impactful, more power wrestling rather than speed. They're less flexible, so that means more drama. And this is two master storytellers in with two master storytellers. What do you think of this one, Marcus? Because this was something quite special.
Yeah, it was as good as the last match, but without the less death, if you will. It was more contained to the ring. Still malicious intent, but on a different level. Like you said, this is important of a tag match, probably more because of who these women are. Um, in terms, like you said, they couldn't use the name, but you know who they were. And just inside the ropes is just like really great stuff. Like, there was a part of it, like the veterans that felt untouchable because obviously who they were, but there was also a part of the team because of who they were from a tenacity perspective, because they took a lot in this match. Like I said, it wasn't necessarily as brutal from a just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god perspective like the last match. But I don't know. There was a heinousness from Akira Masayo that was just like, wow, they really could be like just two like death dealers going around just packing up tag teams. The way they were in sync with it. But yeah, but this was great, and the result didn't go how I thought it would, and that was also really great to see. They earned this finish. So,
Absolutely. It's really special from a Japanese fan's point of view because obviously the Crush Girls kind of ended because they turned 26. That's the only reason why they ended. Now they're 35. And they're older and, they've had a lot more experience. They've wrestled for different companies. They're doing different things. And Lioness Asuka's been a booker, Chikasan Nagai's been a booker. But it's kind of like when Lioness Asuka comes into Gaia, she's a heel and she's wrestling Nagayo, and they wrestle Nagayo for 4 years essentially, and then when that runs out, they try again. And it's just how you go about presenting that old team in a new way, given the situation that they're in. And they try and do their old double team maneuvers, but they get cut off because Hokuto's seen everything before. So of course she knows what's going to come. And it's really interesting from a point of view of they pick the right people to do it with. You couldn't do it with anyone else in that company at the time. Masami has so much history with them because she was the top heel in AJW when they were coming up. And Hokuto has so much history with Nagayo because of her work in WCW and in Gaia. It has to be somebody that big, and it has to be someone who can be trusted to put them over as the biggest tag team in the world, right? And it's a perfect example. What we've been talking about the whole thing with this Hokuto run in Gaia isn't about her, but she's still the superstar. Everything she does is about getting everybody else over. But she's Akira Hokuto. And it doesn't matter because she'll get over anyway. And that's just such an incredible talent to have. As a storyteller, as a wrestler, she just knows the business. That her wrestling IQ is so high. It's just phenomenal. And that gets played on in her retirement matches, which we'll talk about shortly. What else? Anything else to say about this one, Marcus? Because it fascinates me how well this match plays out when you realize like one of the team hasn't tagged team together in like 10 years, and the other one's kind of like two AJW wrestlers from different eras, so they won't have wrestled each other. Tagged together. It's really incredible given what's going on in the ring, isn't it?
Yeah, because if you don't have that information prior to coming into this match, you really think, okay, oh, they look alike, they dress alike, but it comes off as like they are the kind of the young guns, if you will, compared to these absolute, legendary monsters, if you will.
Yeah.
But that's just because of the presentation and the as the kids say these days, aura that they give off. But
Yeah.
you really do get that 10 years worth of chemistry, even with the gap, you know, for the latter parts of this match. And obviously, it still does feel like there's a chasm between, these two monsters and these two other young ladies. But it's the perseverance towards the end that really wrap things home. So they really told a really great story here. And like I said, it was different from the last match, but no less effective. Um,
Yeah.
so definitely appreciation and for what they did it just in general. 'Cause, obviously, like you said, there's still things holding women's wrestling back in a lot of ways. Progress, obviously, but also in a lot of different ways. But we know tag team wrestling in itself is a whole art form within the art form. So,
Yeah.
to really, elevate this, like I said, after a gap that they had to do this on this stage against these two, it probably, I would imagine it meant the world to them. So.
Absolutely. Definitely. Right then, we're going to move on to what I think is probably the most important match on this playlist, which was a match that kind of set the tone for pro wrestling and women's wrestling for the next 20 years. Akira Hokuto, Meiko Satomura, the 29th of April 2001, Yokohama Arena. The main event. No championship on the line. We're going to make ourselves a star, and that star would be Meiko Satomura. Now, it's 2001. She's been wrestling Hokuto for 5 years on and off in main events, on WCW, at Center Stage, on pay-per-view, in the States, on pay-per-view in Japan, in house shows at Kurikan Hall. She's been chasing Hokuto for 5 years, and she knows that the gatekeeper won't let her to that Gaia Heavyweight Championship, the AAW Women's Championship, until she beats Hokuto, or until she beats someone of a serious nature to get to Aja Kong, because that's where she wants to go. And the path will go through Hokuto. Hokuto is coming to the ringside. throws her practice sword to the crowd as if to say, I'm not going to need this tonight. And then her and Satomura go for it. And this is 27 minutes long, probably around about just over 25 minutes of wrestling. And it's breathtakingly good. Just absolutely the best way to get over everything we know about Meiko Satomura now is in this match. She is such the complete package at such a young age, and Hokuto brings out everything in her. Her guts, her determination, her ability to sell, her flexibility, her adaptability. This is also a kind of throwback to the Kandori match from the previous show, in the sense of here's Satomura, the badass shooter, the one that was trained with Billy Robinson, trained by Chigusa Nagayo, bases her wrestling style on as realistic shoot style as possible. All kicks, all life and anger, and it's no longer the scared 16, happy-go-lucky 17-year-old kid in the center stage in Atlanta. It's this beast of a woman that's coming to take Hokuto's head. And this is for the future of Gaia. Hokuto knows she hasn't got long left. She would retire within the year. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But she's doing her absolute level best to not lose any of her aura and keep herself as useful to Gaia in pro wrestling as she possibly can, while still making Satomura look like the biggest star she possibly can and the future of the company. And it's got all of the Hokuto traits. Satomura goes after the sore shoulder from back in the day when Manami Toyota tore it apart. She goes after the knee after the match with Manami Toyota. Always Manami Toyota. It's a common denominator of the downfall of Akira Hokuto. She goes after the knee that was weak from the Grand Prix final in 1990 when she tore it on a guardrail. Every little bit of the Hokuto legend is used against her in Satomura's ungodly pursuit of that AAAW championship, the thing that drives her forward throughout her entire Gaia career. What did you think of this one, Marcus? Because it's so important.
Well, obviously, everything you said times two, but it's another one of those situations where, like, one of the greatest compliments I could give it, like, if I didn't know it wasn't for, a championship, it's exactly what I would have thought looking at this match. Um, and also, this comes off to be like how you'll have like a series of film, like a trilogy or something, and they'll get to one of them. And they'll be like, you don't have to watch the previous two to appreciate this one, but if you have seen them, it just makes it that much more better. Like I feel that way about like what we know before this about Satomura. It's basically a legend making a future one on a foundational level. But to know what Mako Satomura goes on to become, um, and seeing it before this match, it makes it all the more brilliant. Like you said, to your point about bringing every aspect of the pros and specifically the cons when it's coming to her injuries, going into this match as a um, kind of arsenal of approaches that Satomura can take to this match to finally topple this mountain of a woman that she has to wrestle again. It's the story that just keeps on turning, you know, and the match is like the icing on it because that's always the exclamation point on great stories anyway. And these are two of the masters of that ability. So to see it, like I said, to see Satomura at such a young age be able to, hone that and against a person who like taught us so much of it. And just like you said, it was just a brilliant display of technical prowess and just all the good stuff you want in a pro wrestling match is in this match. And like you said, it's such a pivotal one, not only because it's one of the great ones going towards the exit of Hokuto's career, but one of the founding pillars of what built the legend that is now Mako Satomura. So it's just, it's just that all-purpose full-length feature film that you really get everything and the emotion, the action, the the pauses in between that you need to breathe, all that good stuff.
Oh yeah, it's so well paced because they're going hell for leather. It's
Yeah.
like we've been watching it for 3 minutes, and there's like 3 Pele kicks already, and Meiko's just laying stuff in, and it's stiff
Yeah.
and it's snug, and it's just brilliant because it's so important. We've got to make Meiko a star, and that's the story of this match, and this is where she comes out of her shell as like the future of the company, and it's just Hokuto makes her. You not to say that Satomura wouldn't have got there anyway. She would have done because she was just that good.
Mm-hmm.
But having Hokuto in Gaia is such an important part of Gaia's lore because her and Ozaki made all of those kids, and those kids now are in their 40s and they're running Joshi, and they're training the next generation of Joshi, and they prepared them for the dark times. Like this is 2001. By 2005, Gaia shut down. AJW shuts down. There's a massive downturn in the Japanese wrestling industry because there's no money. Japan goes through a massive recession, and it doesn't really come out of the dark ages until like 2013. And who's left standing there at the end in 2013? It's Meiko Satomura and Sendai Girls, and the feud with Ice Ribbon, which kind of like starts the interpromotional feuds again. That kind of rebuilds Joshi from the ground up, because then it's Ice Ribbon versus Sendai Girls, and then it's Sendai Girls versus Stardom, and that blows everything up. And the architect of those wrestling feuds are Emi Sakura, Meiko Satomura, Nana Takahashi, Rossi Ogawa, all the women and men that run Joshi now. Marigold was run by Rossi Ogawa, founded Stardom. Aja Kong was a massive part of Gaia. She was AAAW champion at this point. She was doing the same thing that Hokuto and Ozaki was doing. We don't really get to see it at this particular point because she was a heel as well, and Hokuto's a heel, so we didn't really see them wrestle each other at this particular point. But you know what I mean? Like, Gaia was the finishing school for the next generation of executives, bookers, and main eventers that would carry women's pro wrestling in Japan forward for 20 years. And you don't really see that now till you look at it all in hindsight. Even 10 years ago, when I was enjoying all of those feuds and getting them off Rito Reels and IVP Video and downloading them off YouTube when someone managed to get them snuck up onto YouTube for a couple of days and you'd find them. You see now that this was the crucible in which all of that was born. You know, it doesn't really happen without this match and without Gaia, or without Chigusa Gaia really explaining the business and Akira Hokuto explaining the business in the best way possible, in arenas, in front of massive crowds, which we wouldn't see again until the last couple of years. There would be another 24 years before, for instance, the Joshi company went to Budokan again, or went to Sumo Hall again, because they couldn't fill those arenas. You were looking at 200 halls and 2,000 halls, and some companies not being able to have a dojo because they just couldn't afford it. And it became a real dark age, but this is what was the savior of the Joshi wrestling industry. And you can't really say how important this match is in that legacy. Shall we move on, sir?
Yeah, gotta get to the finale of it. Well, we got a little 5-minute bump before that, but we gotta.
we got 3 matches that are a little
things.
bit of an aside. Yeah, so the great thing about Akira Hokuto is because she was so serious, she made a great foil for the unserious. So here is, on the next one on the playlist is a rematch with Hirota, who, having got hammered when she was a little baby, decided that she would channel the spirit, if not the ability and size, of Hokuto's greatest opponent, Bull Nakano, and came out in full blue hair, nunchucks, and a big bodysuit to try and give some impression of size. And like I said, she has the incredible ability to keep a straight face whilst doing all this. We're at Kurikan Hall. Hokuto cannot keep a straight face whilst doing all of this. And this is just a big, fun, dumb wrestling match because occasionally you need a
Yeah,
big, fun, dumb wrestling match. You want to play like this to just help you appreciate all the seriousness that's going on around it. What did you think of this one, Marcus?
exactly what you said. Fun, dumb, fun stuff. Wasn't really used to see her facing dudes like that. But we had established by now that um she is not necessarily opposed to a quicker side for something fun, like you said, whether it be in a mask or otherwise. But she had a little help towards the end here, and she went on ahead and wasn't getting paid by the minute, and she got in and she got out.
Yes, this is the thing. It was equally like Chigusa Nagayo, Hirata's tag team partner, like battered her with her own nunchucks at one point. Get on with it. I'm paying the fees at you. Let's go. But yes, it's just big and stupid, and Hokuto can't stop smiling all the way through it. In fact, to be honest with you, my favorite match of the Gaia Go Home show was Miyu Miyazaki versus Hirata, and Hirata wrestled as Tiger Mask. And Saki could not stop laughing through the entire match. The biggest biggest heel in pro wrestling history, just corpsing with laughter. Hirata playing a bang-on Tiger Mask impression. And
There.
this is just big and stupid. But it is just a nice aside, and it's the levels of intimidation that Hokuto has that makes this work. Obviously, Hirata has bitten off more than she can chew once again. Is trying her absolute level best to figure out a way out of it. How dare you offend my former tag team partner? I don't think there's anything else we can say other than go watch this because it's just stupid and fun, is there?
Exactly.
The other one we've got is a post-retirement match. Now, I wanted to do some of the post-retirement matches that Hokuto did before we talked about the retirement match because the retirement match is so good. I don't want to end on a high note. So I put a couple of retirement matches on the playlist. Now, one is on YouTube and one is on Daily Motion. If there's a massive request of the Daily Motion ones, we will put it in there somehow. I will figure out how to put it in the list. But this one is slightly bizarre. It's New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it's Kendo Kashin, former IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion, tag team partner of Fujita. They've been friends forever, and at this particular point, Fujita's having a feud with Manabu Nakanishi, old Lumpy himself. A little bit of Nakanishi on this show. I miss him. I really, really do. That's why I like Oleg Bolton, because he reminds me of Nakanishi. Couldn't stand Nakanishi when he was wrestling. Now I miss him. Bizarre world, isn't it? Anyway. And Nakanishi can't stand Kendo Kashin. And for some reason, this match gets up with Akira Hokuto wrestling Kendo Kashin. And Kendo, he's a badass shooter. He should handle this. It's a woman. It shouldn't be that hard, surely. In fact, he falls to the floor saying, come on, you can come pin me. But Akira Hokuto, who was, this is not her first barn dance, decides that she would rather have a straight wrestling match. And this produces to be, again, slightly less dumb because this is kind of like just a match to like set things off in motion with Nakanishi. What did you think of this one, Marcus? Because I think this one's a little bit more serious.
Yeah, a little bit more serious, like you said. More what we had previously, but like I said, it was interesting getting to watch her kind of against the men. And obviously, Kendo Christian was quite quite serious with the. I mean, I like the look. He kind of reminds me of some of the guys we get now. As a little bit of an inspiration in certain aspects, but like you said, it's a little bit more serious, not as well. And Kendo really wasn't playing around with anybody. Somebody came into the match, he was going to drop on the head. Hell of a brain buster, but I think somebody ran in and kind of popped him for the. I mean, I forgot who it was, but I think they hit him with a
It was
spear.
it was Manabu Nakanishi came in to make the save.
Yeah, and then then Hokuto was like, "Yeah, and that's what you get, and that's what you get, and that's what you get." So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah. So,
But yes, this was a fun little wrestling match. Just a little bit strange, really. I thought it was a fun one to stick in. The other one we did is on the Daily Motion one. Did you get a chance to watch the Daily Motion one, Marcus?
Yeah, well, I did watch some. Yeah.
So this one is a bit very, very different because it features the tag team of Daniel Miyashima and Michael Iwasa, and they were going up against Kensuke Sasaki and a mystery partner. Now, Kensuke Sasaki happens to be married to Akira Hokuto. So in the end, it wasn't that much of a mystery when you like watching it back 20 years later. Daniel and Michael were in love with America and hated Japan. And that was basically the storyline. This is in Torimon. This was the precursor to Dragon Gate, today's promotion. This was still Ultimo Dragon's promotion. And to be honest with you, kind of a very Ultimo Dragon kind of vision of what pro wrestling would be. It's in a big crowd as well. It's interesting the way that it's presented because Daniel and Michael seem quite happy to wrestle Kensuke Sasaki because he's just massive, and you know he was in the Legion of Doom. He tagged with Hawk and Animal. He's a big dude. He's a former Triple Crown champion. Sorry, former GHC Heavyweight champion, IWGP Tag Team champion, US Heavyweight champion in WCW. He's a badass. But they don't mind wrestling him. But they're not wrestling Akira Hokuto because she's scary. Whenever Hokuto tags in, they're like, gotta get out of the way, she might kill us. And it was, again, this is big dumb wrestling, but it's got a bit more of a point to it. So I thought this was an interesting one to watch because we've never looked at any Dragon Gate or Torimon on this show. We perhaps should have done. So here's an opportunity for us to look at least one Torimon show. And just an interesting little story, I thought, but it's all based around the legend that is Akira Hokuto, which I thought was fitting. What did you think of it, Marcus?
Yeah, not saying that she, got to take a night off, but it was more in like the more from her usual affair, really having a dial up, and obviously I think that she was tagging with her husband. Um, to that degree, so obviously a very very safe environment and whatnot, but it did feel like she got to be more in a lighter affair, which what you would expect considering she's the only woman in the match, although only female most terrifying. So which is interesting, I guess. Um, funny, kind of almost getting like the Japanese version of the world's greatest tag team with the color, uh, stars and stripes, if you will. But yeah, it had a little bit of everything. It had the action plan.
Yeah. Sorry, just say that again, Marcus, because you dropped out there for a second.
Yes, and it had a little bit of everything. Like I said, she might have been the only woman in the match, but she was the scariest component of it. But she a tag team partner to kind of take the lead in that regard, and he was just as intimidating as she was in certain aspects, with a little bit more of a comedic flair. I'm looking at it now, and it seems like she's either helping the referee or and fucking him out. So
Yes, it was fun. Now, Okuto had these, but she never really had a serious comeback. She just like did things for fun. The most serious wrestling match she had was in AJPW, which was the Sensaki family against one of the heel factions, and I could not find the video of it. I've seen it before, and it's a brilliant, brilliant match. It's a 10-man tag match. But we're going to finish the show, as we should, on Akira Hokuto's actual retirement match. This was, again, something special. Because it's Akira Hokuto and it's always special, but this was one of the last great Gaia cards. Aoki Hamada tagging with Chigaso Nagayo, going up against Akira Hokuto and Meiko Satomura for her last ever wrestling match. Now, the version we got is a highlight reel because it mainly focuses on arguably the best retirement I've ever seen. But at this point, Hamada, Nagayo, Satomura, and Hokuto were arguably the best full wrestlers on earth. Hamada had had a purple patch from around about 1998 up until about 2006, where there was just no one on earth better than she was. The son of the late great Gran Hamada. Funnily enough, the sister of Gilotti Hamada, who we talked about on the last show, because it was one of the people that Hokuto feuded with in Mexico. Meiko Satomura, lean down, looking tough, and really kind of getting to the peak of her young career. Chigasla Nagayo, the living legend, kind of in a new phase of her Gaia career. She'd grown her hair out, become much more kind of like martial arts orientated, and try to reinvent herself one more time. And again, Yokohama Arena, which was the home of Gaia's big cards at the time. And this is just fantastic. This is just wonderful. Because they're all going full bore to show respect to Hokuto in her final match. And Hokuto is not slowing down. She's going out on top. This is one of her best matches of this era. And it's just a fantastic wrestling match before you even get to like the ceremony and the tradition of it. It's just what a wrestling match should be. You know, Hokuto's making the save for Satomura. You know, the career-long rivals of the last 6 years. She's looking after a tag team partner because that's her job. She's a pro wrestler, and there is none more of a pro wrestler than Akira Hokuto. She lives the passion of this particular profession, and it's well timed. It's well put together. Obviously, the big feud for the next 10 years is going to be Hamada and Satomura all the way through Sendai Girls, which is the promotion that kind of like took the spiritual progression from Gaia. It's going to be the big money match in all of Joshi. And this is where that starts. But again, it's Hokuto as the main event, as the star, as the main attraction, but she's still getting people over in the way out. Because this is what she does. She's just such a star, such a brilliant wrestler, such a mind for the business that this is what she wanted. This is the best way to finish her career. What do you think of this one, Marcus?
Yeah, I'm not even going to follow you on that because it's perfectly said. But yeah, I mean, it's just ultimately just such a great snapshot of everything we've been talking about. You know, it's Hokuto at her best. Peak aesthetic, peak aura, um, on basketball as usual, nothing less than 200%. Um, not only highlighting herself, but everybody around her on a hell of a performance and getting the win, going out on top.
Yeah.
And it's not lost on me that I feel like we said the same about the young lady who she was tagging with, who will have a similar retirement match and make us tomorrow.
Yeah.
She essentially set so many standards for. So, um, we've seen a lot of retirement in this business, but Japan gets them right more oftentimes than not, man. They get them right, and this is another example of that. And like I said, the match was great before the pomp and circumstance of the ceremony, which is all class personified. But yeah, this is how you stamp a career, and
Yeah.
it wouldn't be Akira Hokuto if she wasn't going out bleed. So
Absolutely not. This is it. She's bloody before the match is kind of like 5 minutes in. And there's a stretch at the end where it's just finisher after finisher after finisher. And it's just so intense. And again, we do say you got to watch it, but Hokuto just didn't have bad wrestling matches. Like, I think one thing that strikes me is we've watched like literally 15 years of her career. We've watched 30 matches in the last 2 weeks. And I can't remember any of them being bad. Can you?
no, even when she was in Mako's position,
Yeah.
in terms of being a young upstart, she being in the blocks for a lot of those matches, she always fought back, she always fought hard, and just seeing that evolution of what we got towards the end, it all builds. It's a proper arc, even with the pros and cons of it, the cons being the injuries, which ultimately played into the story. of it all, and in her matches. So everything got used for good. So yeah, I mean, it's like I said, this playlist of matches is as important as the commentary. It's the perfect duo, but you really need to sit down and go and watch this woman's career because it really, like James has said numerous times, numerous different ways, it sets a standard, for across the industry. That's in America too, whether you want to believe that or not. You know, it's another Mount Rushmore conversation for another Mount Rushmore, you know, individual. We say it all the time, like that concept needs to be expanded because you can't just limit it down to four. Uh, but yeah, this was another one for the book, and it's really cool to see people get their proper flowers in every aspect, specifically why they can still smell them.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, we've said you don't get Meiko Satomura without Akira Hokuto, but you don't get Becky Lynch either. You know,
Exactly.
you look at that night, SmackDown invaded Raw, and Becky stood with a broken nose and blood's bleeding off her face with a big smile. And there's a direct line with Akira Hokuto, and that attitude and the way Becky Lynch wrestles compared to where Hokuto wrestles, there's a massive influence on her. Not necessarily from a wrestling style point of view, but very much so from a never say die attitude. And it's she is massively influential on certainly the Four Horsewomen because Sarah Del Death Ray, the lead trainer at the women's trainer in the Performance Center at the time of the Four Horsewomen, was a massive Joshi fan, wrestled in Japan an awful lot, used that basis of the AJW dojo for the Performance Center, and fought in a very similar kind of way without all the ridiculous pressure. And
Yeah.
literally changed her aim. She was very vocal about it. She would talk about on Twitter, I'm changing the industry from the inside. I couldn't do it as a main event myself. I'm going to do it with everybody else. And she did. Sarah Amato is one of the most important women in pro wrestling history. And a lot of the things she learned from secondhand from people who wrestled Akira Hokuto. There's just so much going on with Akira Hokuto and the influence she has, and just her presence in the industry just made wrestling so much better. But let's move on to the retirement ceremony itself. After the match, various people come to pay their respects and hand over flowers, and of course take a slap. Are you aware of the tradition of the slap, Marcus? It would
I
seem a
was
bit strange. You wasn't. Shall I explain?
pleased.
So there is a theory that if you are a great warrior and you slap somebody in moments of emotional redress, like say your retirement, then you hand over some of your spirit to the person that got slapped. So it is not an insult. It is very much an honor. And as a result of that, a lot of the young women who had tagged with or wrestled Akira Hotuka, Hirota being the first one to come up and take her slap because she was very scared of her, as you'd imagine, and she very very asked for a slap because it would help her become a tougher wrestler. I don't think it did, but it was pretty funny. And she hit her so hard as well.
Yeah, man, she didn't pull back on.
Yeah, the members of her own faction in Oz Academy came and gave her flowers, and as did Police, who is a long time protagonist in Oz Academy. He was the guy that runs the most interference for the Oz Academy crew, and he's still doing it, even like some 30 years later. Bless him. And then there was lots of friends who came forward. There was Dynamite Kansai and Devil Masami, Tommy, the referee, who'd been there for so many things. Meiko Satomura, who also requested a slap. And that certainly helped her career, as you would expect. She wouldn't be afraid of that. And also, she was the only one that didn't go down,
Yeah.
which is really important. Who else was there? Just going through the list. Yes, Mima Shimoda, her number one protege, and joint number one protege with Etsuki Mita, the founding members of Los Cocaras Orientales. Yes, the women we just saw beat each other up and slice each other open, and Mita and Shimoda are in absolute floods of tears because the boss is retiring. So, yeah, absolutely wonderful piece of an insight into the relationship between wrestlers and tag team partners and friends and seniors and juniors. Like, you really understand the relationship between seniors and juniors when you watch this video, because it explains so much. Like, Mima Shimoda and Mita had such an incredible career in pro wrestling, and it came down to Akira Hokuto. She trained them. She found them. She put them in the dojo. She looked after them. She made them her tag team partners when they were younger. She gave them a clip around the ear roll when they weren't doing it right. She put them in. She put them in a place, but she looked after them, and she made them the biggest tag team in women's wrestling's history. Aja Kong turns up as well as a quiet conversation. There is nothing more Aja Kong than turning up in a female body inspector T-shirt for Akira Hokuto's retirement, is there?
Classic.
Yes. Yeah, that was shot. You're really going. You're going to really retire. Really, really. Are you gonna really? Yes. The two great rivals, and finally Chigusa Nagayo, the boss of Gaia, a woman who was massively influential on Hokuto in her own career and helped train her. And then she gets her Gaia jacket and she walks back up the aisle to meet her husband. Oh, she takes the 10 bell salute. She takes the ribbons of all the colours that she ever wore, and the most ribbons I ever saw thrown in a wrestling ring. And blood on her face, she walks back up the aisle to meet her husband, Kensuke Sasaki, and their baby boy, who looks very terrified because her mum's covered in blood, which I thought was always a bit wrong. He's a 2-year-old child, and I'm covered in blood and not wearing strange clothes, and you've dressed me up in this dinner jacket. But it's very cute.
Yeah.
And such a fitting way for this wrestling god, who's also a mum, to finish out her career. What did you think, Marcus? Because this is emotional stuff, but it's certainly the best way to have a retirement, I think.
Absolutely, and I think to that last point, so it's important even if the kids don't remember for them to see their parents kind of in their element, uh, like that, because that's gonna be. Obviously, this is on tape. Oh, look at me waving and so adorable. Um, but that's important because that makes him a part of that story for her. Even if he don't necessarily remember it, he was there the whole time his mom wrestled. He played a pivotal factor, and I would imagine not only in her choosing to retire, but in that moment. So yeah, like I said, you know, uh, another stand up for the way you retire somebody properly from start to finish. Um, Not saying that we haven't seen any great ones in the states, we have, but really feels like Japan, hits it from really every possible angle from not only the talent perspective, but for the respect of the culture of wrestling in Japan. So it's just really cool to see. Uh, and yeah, like I said, it set the standard for what we ended up getting with Mako Satomura, which didn't include the slap, but um, it was still just as heartfelt and the respect was just as deep. So, yeah, like I said, another pillar on the Mount Rushmore influences in this great art form. And yeah, I'm glad it's on tape to witness, because you hear
Absolutely.
about it, you talk about it all the time. And most people in the business, either careers are going to end too early, not get out of the blocks at all, or or their retirement just won't necessarily be that dream thing. But I really feel like we got to see it here. like I said, from every perspective, and it's just really cool because it's a full career. It's a full career, and most people just don't get to say that. So it's a
No.
beautiful thing, and the fact that she's still influencing in her own way. Uh, Still, it's keeping that legacy going.
Yes, absolutely. This is a 16-year wrestling career that we've looked at, and she only had really 1 year off. Or she had 2 years off. She had a year off when she broke her neck and a year off when she gave birth. So literally 14 years of wrestling non-stop on the biggest stages possible as a main eventer, week in, week out. And that's a remarkable thing to do. You know, there are plenty of wrestlers who've had longer careers. Patrick, my friend on Blue Sky on Twitter, is currently listing up the longest careers on pro wrestling history of active wrestlers who've wrestled well into their 80s. But the way Akira Hokuto wrestled for that length of time is quite remarkable. The fact that she plowed on regardless of injury and pain and all the other things she did in that particular time period is what makes her so very, very special. Is she the greatest wrestler of all time? I would argue there has been better wrestlers. I would argue there's been possibly better storytellers, but no one makes me feel about pro wrestling the way Akira Hokuto does. Marcus, you've had 2 weeks of pretty intense matches that I've made you watch. Thank you so much. What's your closing words on Akira Hokuto?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just, again, grateful just to, not only be able to witness so much of so many pivotal points in such a great career, but be able to get to talk about it with, like I said, you're a walking, talking wrestling encyclopedia. Any
Thank
gaps
you.
that I don't have, you always fill in expertly so. And yeah, it's so easy, like I said, to come off being so Americanized and awful that you really can be closed off. Um, so many different great facets of it. And so much of what I think of American viewers think they love about it, in American perspective, is founded on the back of stuff we got from Japan, specifically the Akira Hokutos, whether it be men or women. The Akira Hokutos, the Mika Satomura, um, so many legends that are still here and passed on. They really did set the standard, and it's just really even better that we got some of it on tape to watch because the stories are great, but being able to get to witness it is cool. And like you said, there may be better wrestlers, and there may be people who will wrestle longer and have had better aspects of their career, whatever. But you perfectly summed it up. It's about who and what how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
Forget what people did, moves, all that. You forget the interest and all that stuff. But the way you felt, the way this art form, people behind it invoked a feeling and a memory in you. That's why you fall in love with this. That's why we're in love with this. And just thank you to Akira Hokuto.
Yes, absolutely. Right then, that calls it for today. Next week, we will be back with our regular stuff. We will be talking Ring of Honor and something else. We haven't decided on something else. Me and Marcus will be back next week. In 2 weeks' time, we start our coverage of the N1 tournament from Noah, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. Myself and Christy will be back on the beat again with some special guests as well. In the meantime, Marcus, where can we find you on the internet, sir?
Sir, on X, still hanging in there. Paradox Kid, that's PARADOXKID, always down there.
You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Blue Sky as Sheriff Lone Star. You can also find me on Instagram as Sheriff Lone Star TX. You can find the show Troopany Show on Twitter, Blue Sky, and on Instagram as Troopany Show. You can also find us as The Troopany Show on Patreon and Facebook. We'll be back next week. Take care. Go watch some Akira Hokuto. Go watch some Mahajoshi, and go watch some wrestling. We'll see you soon. Bye.